My fiancé said at my mom's funeral, "Finally, now we can sell her house and use the money for our wedding." 40 family members heard her. I went silent. Then I told her to leave. When she refused and my uncle, a police officer, had to escort her out, I'm still trying to understand how that sentence came out of her mouth like it was normal, like it was something you say while standing next to a tray of cold funeral sandwiches and half-drunk paper cups of coffee, like grief hadn't just hollowed everyone out in that room, like my mom had been lowered into ground a few hours earlier after cancer bulldozed through her body in barely 4 months. Diagnosis to gone so fast my brain never caught up, and I remember thinking at first that maybe I misheard her, because your mind does weird things when you're exhausted and numb. But then the silence hit, that thick, suffocating kind where you can almost hear people breathing, and I saw my cousin's eyes widen, my sister's hand freeze mid-wipe of her face, my uncle's jaw tighten in that way I'd seen only once before when he talked about work, and my fiancée, we'll call her Lauren, stood there smiling like she just solved a math problem out loud, waiting for approval. I was 33 at the time. My mom had died on a Tuesday, and by Friday I'd learned more about the woman I thought I was going to marry than I had in the entire 2 years we'd been together, engaged for 7 months, wedding planned for late spring, deposits paid, Pinterest boards curated, the whole thing. The funeral itself had been small by necessity, mostly family, a few of my mom's co-workers in elementary school where she'd been a librarian forever, neighbors who'd watched me grow up, people sharing stories that made us laugh and cry in the same breath. That strange whiplash of remembering someone alive while standing in a house where their absence feels loud. Lauren had been there the whole time, dressed appropriately, arm around me when people hugged me, checking her phone more than I noticed at the time. Because grief makes you let a lot slide. It makes everything feel underwater and slow, like you're watching your own life from the bottom of a pool. We were in my aunt's kitchen when it happened, about 15 people within earshot, more drifting in and out. Someone casually asked what I was planning to do with my mom's house, because that's the question people ask when someone dies and leaves property, like it's polite small talk. And for context, my mom left the house to me in her will, a modest 3-bedroom ranch she'd paid off years ago, valued somewhere around $300,000 according to the state paperwork, along with some savings, nothing extravagant. Everything else split between my siblings, and before I could even answer, Lauren jumped in with that line. "Finally, now we can sell it and use the money for our wedding. I've been talking to this venue, and it's perfect. It's like $85,000 all in, but now it's doable. This is honestly perfect timing." And I remember staring at her, thinking there had to be a delay between her brain and her mouth, some glitch where the words came out wrong. But no, she doubled down when people stared. "Don't look at me like that," she said. "We were going to have to cut corners, and now we don't. Your mom will want you to be happy, right?" And I felt something in me go cold and flat, not angry, not even sad, just empty like a switch flipped. "Get out," I said, and my voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded dead. She laughed a little, like I was joking. "Baby, don't be dramatic. We need to talk about this like adults." And when I told her again to leave and she crossed her arms and said she wasn't going anywhere, that I was grieving and not thinking clearly, and someone had to be practical, that's when my uncle stepped in. Full cop voice, calm but unmistakable. "Ma'am, you need to leave now." And she tried to argue with him too, told him he couldn't tell her what to do. And he told her he absolutely could, that she was causing a disturbance at a private residence during a funeral gathering, and she could walk out or be escorted. And she looked at me like I was supposed to save her, defend her, pick her, and I didn't move. I just stared at the counter like if I focused hard enough, I could disappear. He took her by the elbow and walked her out while she screeched about how ungrateful I was, and how everyone was overreacting, and how she was just trying to help. The door shut, and no one said anything for a long second. And then my uncle on my dad's side, the one nobody takes seriously, muttered something about dodging a bullet. A couple people laughed nervously, and I walked outside and sat on the porch because I couldn't breathe in that house anymore. I didn't cry then. I didn't do much of anything. I just sat there staring at the yard where my mom used the garden, and my sister came out and sat next to me and didn't say a word. And that meant more than anything. My phone started lighting up later that night. Messages from Lauren swinging wildly between apologies and accusations. "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it like that. You're being ridiculous. We need to talk about our future. What about the house?" And I blocked her and fell asleep in my childhood bedroom surrounded by my mom's things, waking up the next morning with that awful moment of forgetting she was gone before it slammed back into me. It got worse after that. because of course it did. The next morning, my siblings and I were at the house going through my mom's things, trying to decide what to keep, what to donate. All of us crying on and off, when someone started pounding on the door at 7 in the morning, and my brother opened it to find Lauren trying to push her way in, saying she needed to talk to me, that this was ridiculous, that we were getting married, and my sister physically blocked her and told her she wasn't welcome, and Lauren snapped back that she was my fiancé, and my sister said not anymore, and when I came to the door, Lauren tried to shove past her and failed, because my sister played college softball and Lauren is tiny, and she switched tactics immediately. Baby, please. I'm sorry if it came out wrong. I was just trying to help. You're not thinking clearly because of grief. Stop talking. We need to discuss the wedding. The venue needs a deposit next week or we lose the date. And I told her there was no wedding and her face changed an A. Way that still creeps me out. Fake concern, a cold calculation in half a second. Don't be stupid. She said, you're upset, but we're not throwing away 2 years over one comment. And I asked her how else she meant it, what perfect time it was supposed to mean, and she had nothing. So I told her we were done and to leave, and she demanded the ring back. Say it was worth $8,000, and she wasn't letting me keep it if I was going to act like this. And I went to my car and grabbed it from the glove compartment where I'd tossed it the night before and threw it at her feet, and she scrambled to pick it up like it was oxygen, then stood there like she expected something else, like an apology or a change of heart, and when it didn't come, she stormed off. Over the next few days, I started replaying everything, every conversation, every moment where I thought she was being helpful or organized, and realizing how much she'd been controlling without me wanting to see it, how every future conversation was about the wedding, the house, the lifestyle, never about us as people, just acquisition and aesthetics, and how she'd talk about my mom's house before, the school district, the yard, remodeling plans, things I'd brushed off as normal planning. Then her mom called and told me I was making a huge mistake, that her daughter loved me, that I was being cruel, and when I pointed out what her daughter had said, she brushed it off as being taken the wrong way, and I hung up and blocked her too. The wedding planner called a couple days later saying Lauren was trying to make me pay cancellation fees because I'd inherited money, so I could afford it, and also casually mentioned that Lauren had tried to keep the wedding date and just swap out the groom's name, which was a moment it fully hit me that I'd never been to point, I'd been a placeholder. Her best friend confirmed it over coffee. Told me Lauren had been talking about my mom's house for months, even before she got sick, calling it convenient timing when she did. And I went home and found a letter my mom had written to me before she died warning me she didn't trust Lauren, that she cared more about what I could give her than who I was. And I cried harder than I had since the diagnosis. After that, it turned into harassment, legal threats, fake lawyers, calls to my job, a false police report claiming I'd stolen her jewelry, social media posts painting herself as a victim until my aunt publicly shut it down with the truth, calls to realtors impersonating me to try to list a house, attempt to get reinstated on my health insurance, demand letters claiming I'd promised her the house verbally. None of it went anywhere, but all of it drained me, because grief already takes everything out of you, and then you still have to function, still have to protect yourself. Eventually it slowed, then stopped, not because she understood, but because she ran out of leverage and money and people willing to enable her. We sold the house months later, split some of the money between my siblings, even though we didn't have to, paid off debts, tucked the rest away. And when Lauren found out and sent me a message about choking on money I stole from her, I felt nothing. That's the part that surprised me the most. Not relief, not triumph, just quiet. The grief from my mom still comes in waves, random and sharp, triggered by a book on a shelf or a recipe card in her handwriting. But the rest of it is just noise now. The wedding would have been next month. Sometimes I think about that and shake my head. I frame my mom's letter and keep it on my desk, because when I doubt myself, I read it and remember that some lines, once crossed, can be uncrossed, and that walking away wasn't dramatic or cruel. It was the only sane response. I didn't lose a fiancé that day. I lost an illusion. My mom is gone, and that's the real loss. Everything else is survivable. I'm still here, still moving forward, one day at a time, without someone who saw my mother's death as a business opportunity, and that, honestly, is enough.